Hello and welcome to Retail Week's latest virtual event, What Really Happened on Black Friday, which is part of our Golden Quarter content series. I'm Gemma Goldfingal, Features Editor of Retail Week, and I'm joined by our expert panel, Cumrun Adityan, UK Trading Director of eBay, Lisa Hooker, Consumer Markets Leader at PwC, Alison Lomax, Lifestyle Director of Retail at Google, and Mike Wheeler, Category Director at The Very Group. So Black Friday has been and gone. The event, which has upended Christmas trading for the past 5 years and created a new peak, always brings drama, and this year is no different. But this was a very different Black Friday. Online has always performed strongly during the discounting event, but this year, for very obvious reasons, this was off the scale. But what actually happened this Black Friday? What new trends and shopping behaviour emerged? And what does this all mean for Christmas 2020 and beyond? So without further ado, let's get into the nitty gritty. What happened on Black Friday? Lisa, I'm going to start with you. I know PwC did some extensive consumer research ahead of Black Friday about how people intended to shop. What did it show, and how are they going to shop differently, particularly after lockdown was announced?
Well, we did our survey in October as usual, and what it told us is that people were going to spend more and were as interested as they were in the prior year. And this year they're going to spend about 8% more. But when they announced the increased restrictions, we decided to run the survey again, and there was a massive reduction in interest in Black Friday, with people now saying they're going to spend 20% less, particularly that 18 to 25-year-old age group. And when I've been looking to see, well, did they spend 20% less? The first data I've seen come out has been Barclaycard, which registers about £1 in £3, which indicates that people spent around 10% less. So it does seem that the shock of the extra restrictions did reduce people's spending during this period.
Did that really affect the Very Group, Mike?
I guess, how did customers at the Very Group shop differently? I suppose a little bit like the summer lockdown, we saw customers spending money in categories that sort of they were laser focused around entertaining the children at home, improving their homes after all, spending a lot more time within them at the moment. Self-care and well-being were paramount. For us, that meant that the Black Friday event resulted in very strong electrical, home and beauty performances. And they were much stronger relative to, I suppose, a typical year. And clearly, from an electrical point of view, the electrical category was boosted by some significant tech launches through Golden Quarter, whether that be the PS5, the Xbox, the iPhone 12, to name but a few. I think we definitely saw a movement for our customers wanting to get organised sooner for Christmas this year. And I think that started the moment we launched Black Friday. We launched it on the 6th of November. That was probably 2 weeks earlier than sort of the average retailer, perhaps. And our research indicated that customers had a mix of concerns really around product availability and general product scarcity within the market, driven by disruption in the supply chain, and also general delivery capacity. So much of the business was going to move naturally online during lockdown. And I think finally, just internally, one of the things that we saw play out was we enjoyed a fairly strong margin performance through the event. I think by starting earlier, meant that it took some of the pressure off potentially launching heavier discounts through the latter phases of Black Friday. I think that's important because to drive a good gross margin in the event, given the increase in operational costs that we are all seeing through that disruption in supply chain, it gave us a good platform for the event.
There's a lot of big trends in there, Mike. Spoiling. On one of them, actually, I'm going to ask you again. So obviously you started Black Friday earlier this year, and it seems like consumers were shopping earlier. Did that mean there was less of that big bang on the actual day?
There was. I think we have seen a great performance across the Black Friday event. For us, that's been a 4-week event. And clearly our performance has been distributed across the 4 weeks. Of course, we expect this to be our biggest Black Friday event. But clearly the drive to get organised sooner gave us a stronger start to the event. But across the 4 weeks, we expect it to be one of our biggest Black Friday events to date.
Good stuff. Cameron, when I come to you next, obviously you sell a wide range of products across eBay. On the kind of margin point in the level of discounting, was it different this year?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit different. I'll probably echo a lot of what Mike said and maybe build on that. So in terms of the margin and discounting point, yeah, probably not as many aggressive discounts offered by our sellers. And I think part of that was driven by the fact that a lot of the really in-demand items were actually had quite low stock issues actually out there, which meant that retailers didn't have to discount as much. That was definitely a factor, particularly in the tech category. And the other big trend we saw in tech actually, which we've been seeing for the last couple of years, but has really stepped on this year, is the growth of the refurbished tech business. So these are used products that have been refurbed professionally, and it offers consumers great value and it's more sustainable. That's definitely an area we've seen growing all through the year, really, since lockdown hit us, but it's really taken off at Black Friday. And it's a great balance because it offers consumers great value, it's more sustainable, and it means our retailers and sellers don't have to discount as heavily. So that's definitely the tech space. That's the trend we've seen growing very strongly this year. And then beyond that is probably what Mike talked about in terms of health remains a priority, which it has been all through the year. So things like fitness equipment, smartwatches, Fitbits, golf and cycling have had very good years, and that continues. We would expect that to change going into this week as lockdown eases. We're expecting to see things like trainers and outdoor wear dominate this week, and we've already seen that trend change a little bit. And on the timing point, I guess the one thing I'd say is definitely saw a similar shape to what Mike called, in which more people starting their Black Friday offers earlier. eBay ourselves didn't go too much earlier, but a lot of our sellers started their offers earlier. And we also saw is actually within Black Friday itself is we actually saw a peak in the morning a bit later. So rather than people having to browse on their way into work, etc., and shop on their way into work, people were kind of shopping around 9 a.m. and they were logging in. Typically, is what we saw a bit later than you normally see, and it kind of sustained through the day rather than kind of having the shape that Black Friday has. And interestingly, we've also seen over the last couple of days that momentum has kept up. So to your point about it being no longer a one-day event, it hasn't been for a while. We've actually seen kind of demand and volume build over the weekend and into Monday. So that momentum that Black Friday has started early and kind of kept going.
Really interesting. We don't have to hide our Black Friday shopping from our boss any longer, do we? Now we're working from home.
No, absolutely not.
Now we're getting into the data point of what actually happened. It would be remiss of me not to go to Alison at Google. You must have a wealth of data to show the kind of general trends. What did you see? What interesting trends could you pick out?
Yeah, I mean, interesting. Mike talked about the Black Friday event. In fact, what we were seeing was that, he talked about it being a month. We were seeing people searching as early as September. So massive spikes in like Christmas trees and stockings, even in September. And I think there's something sort of psychological, emotionally, we were looking for something to look forward to. And you see that even sort of around your neighbourhoods with the amount of trees that are already up in November. So there's been a much, much longer runway building into the Black Friday event. And we have seen that consumers have searched so much more for deals, offers and promotions. And this sort of started really from the first lockdown and has sustained. So Black Friday sales searches were up 250%, so enormous spikes. And then the other thing, interestingly, about how people were actually searching on the day, the biggest spike in searches happened just after midnight. So again, even though this Black Friday event was protracted and extended, there is something about it's midnight, I can start shopping now, and people had done quite a lot of that basket building beforehand as well.
Good stuff. So if we talk about Black Friday being a solely online event or largely online event this year, did retailers take a different approach to actually attracting customers? I'm going to go to you again, Alison. It seems like an obvious thing to do. Over to you.
There are a few observations that we have. The first is because there was so much uncertainty about demand and that volatility, and how was it going to play out? There are a lot of questions about whether some demand had been brought forward, for example, consumer electronics from the previous lockdown. the biggest opportunity for retailers they've sort of really exploited was using automation. So using automation to capture that demand in market and to set the machines to whatever the business goals are, 70 million signals in 100 milliseconds can be much more responsive to what the opportunity in the marketplace is. Another thing we saw with stores closed, actually, retailers turned a lot more to YouTube for that sort of inspiration and discovery, and it's really been a tipping point for the platform for us. Like 98% of all UK populations sort of use YouTube as part of their viewing schedule. And then the third one is quite interesting. I think it's more one to watch for next year, but it's that anti-Black Friday sentiment. So we saw, for example, Sofology was one example of a retailer promoting Green Friday instead of Black Friday. We speculated about whether we'd see more of that anti-Black Friday this year, but as I said, I think it might be one to watch more for next year.
Mike, how about you? Was there any different approaches? Obviously, earlier being one of them for you, but any different approaches about how you attracted customers this year?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I would say. So certainly, the early point stands. I think genuinely you could see that in the market too. I think I saw an external comment that suggested that by the 11th of November, there'd been sort of 3 times more retailers out with Black Friday messaging relative to last year. Also, though, saw a real move in sort of enhanced delivery messaging in a key theme, whether that be around emphasising click and collect, discounting of annual delivery passes, safe home delivery, enhanced returns. Many tactics being deployed within the market, opposed to with their hard-earned cash. We work very hard to build on successes of previous Black Fridays year after year. For that seamless customer experience, I suppose. And we tested a set of changes through Easter and the bank holiday promotions that we were going to execute on Black Friday, thought could give us an underlying improvement in conversion. And that centered on, improved product discovery through improvement in navigation and filtering, improvements in the distribution of Black Friday content through the layers of the journey. So I suppose making sure going into the event that the shop is well set up as it possibly can be, really.
Yeah. Cameron, any new approaches for eBay?
Yeah, so I suppose I'd probably again echo a couple of points made in terms of people going earlier that everyone's made. The other thing that we've noticed is we work with 300,000 businesses. The majority of them actually have an offline and an online presence. And what we've seen is clearly as we've gone into lockdown, a lot of these businesses were quite, particularly the smaller ones, in a very agile manner, shifted their marketing budgets and media spend to be much more online focused, obviously. And that's everything from off-platform places like YouTube that Alison touched on, but also on platform as well. So kind of combination of different things. Definitely saw that accelerate through the month of October and into November. And the other thing we saw, which Mike touched on, which really started off when lockdown started, was the changes to delivery. So, free shipping being something that's become even more important as we've gone into lockdown. And a lot of our sellers and retailers made that change in kind of April, May, probably then thinking it was a temporary move to kind of get them through lockdown, and they kind of sustained it as they found ways of operating with that offer.
Well, I'm going to jump into delivery, actually, given that you guys, the retailers, have mentioned it. Was it much different this year? We've heard a lot about, the capacity issues in the market, etc. And I think there was a level of concern from consumers. Tell me about the reality of the situation. Will shoppers have to wait a bit longer for their Black Friday purchases this year? Cameron, I'm going to come to you.
Yeah, sure, Gemma. So I think the answer is yes, they will, but a couple of things. A, they know about it up front, and in general, they're fine with it. So if I compare it to the first, when lockdown hit us back in end of March, clearly the carriers got overwhelmed, and that meant lots of parcels were delayed and customers being disappointed in terms of their expected dates of delivery. What we've been able to do this time is being able to work more closely with the carriers to adjust our delivery timings on site, so that customers know upfront that it's going to take a bit longer, but actually that hasn't affected conversion in any way. I think everyone understands the world we're in, and as long as we manage expectations up front, it's not been an issue. So yes, customers are waiting longer, but they know about it up front, and there's been no impact on conversion that we can see.
And from your perspective, Mike, I guess, we've got so many people who are working from home and are at home, 9 till 5, all day, in fact, during lockdown. Has that changed your delivery and what customers want from delivery?
Yeah, sure. So, we've got a fantastic click and collect offer as part of Very. And actually, we've seen home delivery really step up in terms of the mix within our business. But people are in their homes more. That's facilitated, I suppose, earlier and later deliveries, and our first-time delivery rates have also gone as well. People are better to sort of take delivery, I suppose. For larger items that require two-man delivery, to this comment, we chose to extend some product lead times, continue to take orders on future inbound shipments, and again, in managing the customer promise there, we haven't seen customer cancellations increase. The customers comfortable and accepting of the typical lead time required and the situation that retailers find themselves in. I think the final thing that I would add is, we're very fortunate. We've just invested in a state-of-the-art fulfillment centre in East Midlands called Skygate. That went operational the day after the Prime Minister announced the summer lockdown. And that's a huge decision for our business, really, because it effectively allows us to take an item, order placement through to dispatch. That process around 30 minutes. We've a new capability there, which hopefully will continue to keep us definitely an outstanding piece for our customers.
Lisa, I'm going to come to you with quite a big question now. We've heard a bit about categories that have done well this year, some of the usual suspects you'd imagine, like tech. But who ultimately do you think have been the big Black Friday winners?
Well, Black Friday's always been about buying for yourself, and the two main categories are electricals and adult fashion. But this year there's been a bit of shift towards Christmas, and both practical gifting and pampering, and in areas such as children's clothing and beauty. And the area that's sort of lost out to that is fashion, where actually for the first time women are prioritising health and beauty over fashion. And on the run up to Black Friday, actually, we've been tracking promotions, and they were slightly less than last year, but by Black Friday, they were the same. And we found generally promotions were more selective across most categories, again, except for fashion. So fashion's a pretty tough environment at the moment.
It is, and so we've seen deeper discounts over the fashion industry during this period. 99% at some retailers.
Yes.
Do you think they will have worked?
I think that on the good thing with fashion is it's been a very difficult year, but people did start to adjust their stock levels and trying to pivot away from maybe more formal, more going out wear to bring down. So I think retailers have been managing their stock levels, but this second lockdown gives us less reason to go out, less reason to shop. And so I think they've had to clear particularly anything that's more Christmas related stock. So I think they've done sensible measures to ensure that they're not left with a significant overhang as we go into 2021.
How does that tell you with your search data, Alison, in terms of what people are searching for?
Sorry, it just cut out then.
I'm sorry, how does that tally with your search data, what people are searching for, what types of deals?
Well, interestingly, what we haven't seen is big shifts in terms of new categories. So it's just an increase in searching of the categories that we would have seen last year. So we've seen no major changes in that respect, which is something we're quite interested to see. Again, going back to my point about had any demand being brought forward or what's changing. Just to one point, actually, I want to build on what Lisa said. I think what's really interesting in the health and beauty category is how innovative they've been around that inspiration. So if you look at people like Charlotte Tilbury, they've done a brilliant job at providing that virtually with the kind of virtual shopping malls, even, Estee Lauder, all the virtual try-ons. And so I think they've done a very good job of, with the stores being closed, of providing some of that inspiration and discovery online.
You provided a great segue for me because I wanted to talk about stores reopening, funnily enough. Obviously, they reopened yesterday. What are we expecting in the run-up to Christmas now, post-Black Friday? Do we think there's going to be a notable movement towards shopping in stores now? or will online remain the dominant channel? I'm going to start with you, Lisa. What do you think?
Well, only 37% of people know what they want to buy for Christmas. So they rely a lot on browsing. Now, you can browse online as well as shops, but I do think there'll be a shift back to get that browsing experience, particularly for gifting where you don't really know what you want. The other thing is a lot of consumers saying we do want to continue to support our local high street. So I think there's quite a lot of people are waiting for shops to reopen to go to their local high street and buy all those extras that they buy for Christmas. So I do think online will still be dominant, but I do think there'll be a move back to more shopping in stores.
Cameron, it feels weird to go to a big online operator to ask them is there going to be a rush back to stores, but what do you think?
I think there's going to be a kind of a short-term effect and a long-term effect. In the short term, I think you're going to see, as soon as stores open tomorrow, I think you will see a rush back to stores. I think we all probably remember the day before lockdown when there were queues all around London, definitely, and the stores were packed, and we could see it in our numbers. People wanted to go out and shop in stores the last day they could. I expect to see that again from tomorrow, maybe into the weekend. In the longer term, I think, clearly, I think at an overall level, something like UK retail has gone from being about 19% online to about 30%, give or take, depending on how you look at it. I think that trend holds. We can see it in places like Wales, which have come in and out of lockdown already. And we saw a similar trend where as soon as shops opened, people went to shops a bit more. But really, a week into it, things kind of stabilized with online at a much higher level than it has been previously. And I think that holds. Don't see that trend changing going into next year.
This is a big question, I think, every year, not just this one, which is about the return to full price post Black Friday. Is it possible? Will we be seeing it this year when there may well be in some categories, a mountain of stock still left? So, Lisa, I'm going to come to you. What do you think? Can we return to full price?
So consistently in recent years, over 70% of retailers promoting Black Friday, and then over half come back for a couple of weeks on those crucial run-up to Christmas shopping. And I do think we will see similar activities this year because in a lot of categories, pre the lockdown, they were all back into growth. And also people were being a bit more cautious around stock. So whilst there might be excess stock in some areas, particularly apparel, there's actually some stock shortages elsewhere. So I think discounting will be selective and will go back to full price until you get to the normal Christmas sale period.
Mike, how are you dealing with it, the Very Group? How are you switching back on full price?
Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting question. We obviously usually see that twin peak over the Black Friday period. Black Friday, like I say, has been significant for us. We actually think that gifting period in December may be slightly smaller, perhaps a week earlier, and probably still more a little bit online relative to last year, I suppose. I do think, though, that the stores opening, people that are sat, Lisa's point, people that are sat on excess stock, wanting to get out of the blocks, try and recover what they can in P6, having had a tough November performance, if you like. I could imagine that in certain category sales being brought forward as an example as we head into December.
I'm going to move on to a big question now, and one that all retailers look to, which is, some of the trends that we see over Black Friday are very Black Friday specific trends. Some really give an indication as to what's going to come for the rest of the period. So, Alison, from what you've seen at Google, what trends do we think are really going to be a big influence over how we shop over the next month?
Yeah, and I think, going back to my point earlier, it's sustaining these trends that we've observed over the last 6 months. So one of them is obviously mobile and apps. Apps is, we've seen huge growth in apps for commerce this year. The likes of sort of Depop, who've seen a sort of, significant rise. We've seen new categories increasingly bought online. I mean, a year ago, I wouldn't have imagined buying a sofa online without sitting on it. Engagement rings, luxury handbags, there are these new categories that we wouldn't have purchased online. And it's also new demographics as well. Someone like my mum, who historically, she's 78, hadn't done any e-commerce shopping, and now she's doing all of her e-commerce shopping and will probably continue to sort of carry on doing a lot more of that. And then I think the final one, which is interesting, is the new industries which are also sort of embraced Black Friday. So you've seen it a lot more in food this year. So Uber Eats, Black Friday, and a bit in travel last year. So it's much broader now than just retail. It seems to be sort of all encompassing.
Oh, that's some big trends there.
Yeah. Gemma, if I just come in on that, I think just probably echo what Alison said. I think a lot of what we're seeing, I think, as trends that started off in March and they kind of carried on, probably exacerbated through Black Friday. I think they go into next year, and there's probably two things, I guess. One is the point about I made about refurb. I think I definitely see that sustaining, and sustainability becomes more important in consumers' minds, and I can see the focus on refurbished tech becoming more important next year. And the other interesting thing we've seen is support for small businesses really grow. So I think you made the point, Gemma, earlier about people wanting to go back to the high street, and I think that's true to support their local small businesses, but that's true, I think, online as well. So, we've seen some data that shows us that something like 48% of Brits are choosing to buy their Christmas present for independent retailers, and more than half, 57%, that they'll continue to shop small moving forwards in 2021. And we've seen that on our platform with the kind of 300,000 SMBs. A lot of them have had very strong growth this year, and definitely see that trend kind of sustaining into next year as well.
Good stuff. Mike, how about you? What are the big trends that you think are going to be, right, this is a good indicator of what's going to happen from now until Christmas?
I think from our side, I think that the sort of the trends are in sort of the gifting categories. We'd expect to see the gifting categories really step forward. Continuation of toys, beauty, and things of sort of well-being in the new year. And clearly technology and electrical performance continuing. We'd expect to see our home performance start to slow as people start to prepare themselves to sort of the January sale period, and delivery promises are now beyond, largely for two-man items, and now beyond Christmas anyway. Definitely those gifting categories we'd expect to see really step forward in the last few weeks of the period.
Actually, to the point that Alison made, and I know that that you led the home category, didn't you, at the Very Group? Have you seen a big step change in terms of people buying those larger items like sofas, beds, etc., without sitting on them, etc., by Very?
Yeah, sure. I mean, clearly we for many years now we've been purely an online business. I think our furniture categories are a substantial part of the mix of what we sell within home business. Directionally, we've seen some exceptional performance. If you looked at when the clocks went back prior to Black Friday as an example, that change in mindset, the dark nights drawing in, the cooler temperatures coming, step change we saw in best performance has been fantastic. And for many years now, we've been able to have a very strong upholstery performance online, despite to Alison's comment, that customers would like, high ticket purchase would like to sit on those products for purchasing them. And garden performance as well. We have a large garden category prior to the peak season. And we saw an exceptionally strong performance through the earlier parts of lockdown. And garden furniture, again, high ticket, was a big part of our success in that space too.
Yeah. Lisa, I'm going to ask you the same question. What are the big trends that you've seen that you think are going to be really pertinent in the run up to Christmas?
Well, it's funny. In terms of Christmas, we've just done our Christmas prediction survey, and people are going to spend less by about £30. And it's not because they want to spend less, it's because they've got less reason to spend money, because they're having more intimate gatherings, seeing fewer people. And if you don't see people, you don't always buy them a present. So we do think we'll spend a little bit less. And usually at this time of year, when we ask them, by far top priority, food and drink, Christmas dinner and homeware. But actually that's fallen down a little bit in terms of prioritisation. And the big categories are presents for your pets and presents for your kids and stocking fillers. But you're not necessarily buying the kids what they want. The kids want electricals and techs. Parents want to buy them practical gifting, clothing and board games. So those are trends we expect to see in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of people are going to be disappointed, apart from the pets.
Yeah, exactly.
I got my pet a cat advent calendar this year, which is a new purchase for me. So I'm probably one of the people that you're surveying, Lisa.
Gemma, can I have one final comment, actually, just in terms of what we're seeing is, I think obviously based on the sort of macroeconomic, context, is that people are much more value conscious, but they're also much more open to switching and much more open to purchasing from different retailers. We did a study with Ipsos that said 73% of UK shoppers were open to buying from a retailer they hadn't purchased from before. That's obviously a huge opportunity for retailers, but we're also seeing it's been an opportunity for sort of international retailers to come into the market, and so particularly online. And Lisa mentioned the apparel and fashion category as being very competitive. We're seeing sort of Zalando and Shein much more active this year than previously before. So that's quite an interesting new dynamic this year.
I'm going to come to you. That's a really good point, really interesting point. So, Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot here. How do you fend off this competition? How do you make sure your customers are loyal during this period where perhaps we're being slightly more promiscuous than we have been in the past?
I think generally we're as a business we are our proposition is a strong one. Firstly, we're online. Secondly, we're multi-category. And then you come back to we offer affordable ways to pay, and I guess our customers understand that combined offer. Therefore, our retention rates are fairly strong from a customer point of view, because they recognise that we have a very broad assortment and we can help them manage the payments of the products that they buy throughout the year.
Cameron, same to you.
Gemma, if I just comment on that, Gemma, sorry, the one thing again to build on that is you can look at it both ways though, right? Clearly there are other entrants coming into the UK market, but there are opportunities for UK retailers and sellers to sell internationally, right? And I guess, other markets in exactly the same shift as us in terms of much more volume shifting online, and that just opens up more demand. And, clearly eBay is an example, international platform. We help our sellers sell to over 190 countries, and that kind of carries on. But, lots of sellers and retailers do this themselves. They've definitely taken the opportunity to expand their international operations this year. We've seen that particularly between the places like Europe and America. And I think again that's a big opportunity for UK retail, UK sellers going into next year. With that, obviously there's a big unknown of Brexit and the impact that has on exactly how to operate that. But I think most people have kind of now recognized what a big opportunity that is. And the more kind of agile and forward-looking retailers and brands and sellers we work with are definitely taking that opportunity on.
Yeah, great point.
It's a good opportunity as well as a threat as well. Good point. Lisa, I want to come back to what you were saying earlier, which was about kind of people spending or saying they would spend around £30 less this year. How does that kind of... Ultimately, people are asking, is this going to be a good Christmas? Is it going to be all right on the night? What would that suggest to you? Is that going to be a good result for retail this year?
Well, I think most retailers were planning and expecting for Christmas to be slightly more subdued this year, because we didn't even know until a few weeks ago exactly what we were allowed to do at Christmas. And it's not surprising that probably a reasonable amount of that drop will be in food and drink, as we see less people and have mini celebrations rather than large celebrations. So I don't think it'll be unexpected across the industry. And I think people have planned for a slightly more subdued Christmas.
Yeah. And I guess there are winners and losers as well across Christmas. And I've got two big online retailers on the line. You would think that, when it comes to winners, it's a good place to be. How are you feeling in general about, how Christmas will be for eBay, Cameron?
So I think, Gemma, I might answer in two bits. I think for eBay, like you said, like any online retailer, online platform, clearly there's been a big shift this year, and that's been beneficial. I also think of it in terms of our 300,000 business sellers on the platform, because ultimately they're our partners. We don't own any stock on eBay. We work with our sellers. And I think, having spoken to a lot of them, I think there's clearly a mix. Depending on what category you are and how quickly you've been able to shift more of your business online. So I think overall retail will be slightly subdued, as Lisa said. But I think those retailers and sellers who've been able to shift more of their business online and just take advantage of what's happened in terms of overall retail dynamics this year, we are looking forward to a good Christmas.
Same question to you, Mike.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what Kumran said. Actually, I think what we know is that our customers want to sort of celebrate Christmas more than ever before. Right, it has been a tough 9 months, and we can see that in our festive performance. By example, we do know that they'll want to sort of shop, socialise, and gift very differently this year. Though I think it's fair to say, I think it's clear up until now that online has clearly been a beneficiary. In the lockdown situation that we've gone for. I also think that generally for retail, we expect Golden Quarter, the total non-food retail market, to be down. I don't think that would be a surprise. I also think it'd be a mix by category. So I think if you're a pure play electrical retailer, the likelihood is that you've fared quite well over the Christmas period. I think clearly, from a fashion point of view, slightly more subdued. But then, on the horizon, well-being on the agenda in the early part of January, hopefully, back to sportswear will start to pick up into the new year.
Actually, you've moved on to my next question, Mike, which is looking ahead to 2021. So some of these trends that we're seeing over Black Friday and Golden Quarter in general, what does that kind of spell for 2021? What trends do we think will continue, and how do we think 2021 will be for retail? Alison, I'm going to start with you.
So it's no surprise the person from Google will say that digital will keep on accelerating. Kumran obviously talked about the e-commerce shift, up 10 points this year to 28% of total retail sales. That is likely to sustain. And we've talked about agility and automation before. They're increasingly important. And next year, data will be a big priority in sort of ensuring getting that right. Interest in local, I think, is another really interesting one. 88% of consumers who are now shopping more locally say they're likely to do so in the future. But I think with that there is a bit of a polarization of behaviours and attitudes. People talk about the importance of local, but obviously benefit, satisfying our needs of, convenience and quick delivery. We really care about our local high streets, but more and more shopping is online. And we're also seeing that in sustainability as well. So 56% of shoppers have said that they actively seek out fashion stains which are sustainable, yet we're not seeing a structural shift yet in shopping behaviours. So I think this polarisation next year is really interesting in terms of how it will play out.
Mike, how about you? What's your predictions for 2021? What are going to be the big trends that will sustain?
Yeah, so I guess I would expect into the new year the high street to remain open. And with the vaccine on the horizon, hopefully we'll start to sort of socialise more. I think that will be good for the fashion categories generally, because I think that people returning to the high street, people will start to prioritise fashion purchases once more. I do think, though, that what we've seen over the last 9 months has probably further increased customers' openness and willingness to shop more and more online. So I do think the online participation will remain strong into next year. I think it's all about proposition for me. I think if you're sat on a strong proposition, and come back to being multi-category and offering those flexible ways to pay, hopefully that will have us well set, certainly from a growth perspective, to a new year with, I guess, so much economic uncertainty.
Lisa, what's your take?
Well, I agree with what was said. On the positive, you've got vaccines, better treatment, better track and trace, slightly tempered by Brexit and unemployment growing. So I think digital will stay, and I think retailers have to get better engaging where their customers are today, not where they were tomorrow. I think health and well-being and sustainability. But the only other thing I would add to that, there will be a bit of a flight to value as unemployment does start to rise next year, and people have actually been protected this year because of the government schemes, but next year there will be a bit of a pinch on people's wallets, which will have a bit of an impact.
I mean, what's your view?
Yeah, I'm probably personally optimistic. I think the big unknown is macroeconomic kind of context, as Lisa touched on, but assuming that goes the right way, I am optimistic. I think some of the trends of what's been touched on already, right, in terms of the shift to digitization, increased importance of mobile, and I think it's that kind of almost dichotomy of sustainability and value. And I talked about refurb a couple of times. I think it's a great example of where it brings those two together. I think definitely they're the true trends. They do sometimes go against each other, but they can come together as well. I think where they do come together, we're going to see a real acceleration in those parts of retail. And the other thing is that I think retail as a whole will get more polarized. I think there'll be more winners and losers. I think what lockdown and the pandemic has done, I think it's accelerated kind of a lot of change that would happen naturally over 5-10 years. And I think what we're seeing is those businesses and retailers who are able to kind of be more agile, adapt to changing conditions, and adapt to the kind of changing consumer needs in terms of sustainability, value, etc., are doing well, and others are struggling. And I think we kind of probably see that continue into next year.
The really interesting point, I think during this conversation, we've talked a lot about polarization. So between winners and losers, but also in our trends, online and localism, sustainability and value. It's a really incredibly polarized retail industry right now. What can retailers do when so many competing trends are fighting against each other? Lisa, I'm going to come to you.
I think it is about listening to their customer and having agility and resilience. So the better retailers have pivoted online. They have taken away, if they're fashion, moved away from formal and workwear more to casual wear. And they're also more actively communicating with their customer. I mean, customers have told us in all surveys that they will reward those corporates that actually have looked after their people, their staff, and actually have engaged with them through a really tough year.
Cameron, in fact, a great example you've mentioned it a few times is Refurb. You offer a vast array of products, but how do you tackle the kind of consumer that wants so many different things right now?
It's clearly not an easy one, Gemma, but I think there's a couple of things we do. I think one is you try and find the balance, right? So is there a way of meeting both those needs? I've talked about Refurb. I won't talk about that again. The other interesting one is, the one about localism and online. But actually, what we've seen is lots of, again, through 2020, is lots of smaller retailers. I'll give you an example of a business called Toy Barnhouse, who have 6 stores selling toys in the Sussex region. When lockdown hit in March, they shifted their entire business online on eBay, and they've had a really, really fantastic year. And what they've been able to do is satisfy both those needs in terms of people who want to continue to shop local. They had a loyal customer base who wanted to continue to shop with them and support local business, but they managed to do that from an online, shopping online and not having to go into store, A, when stores were closed, and B, when some people didn't feel safe doing it. So I think what you're looking for are ways of kind of addressing both of those. And rather than looking at it as a polarization, it's almost saying, well, how can I satisfy, it's 2 different factors that are important to consumers. So how can I set my business up to do both of those? And that's the way eBay try and do it, and that's the way we work with our sellers and partners to do it.
And Alison, same question to you. You must see so many competing trends from your search data, etc. What's your advice to retailers to cope with this?
So I think, Lisa mentioned the word agility. It's really understanding, what's going on in the marketplace. And something that we do with all of our customers is sort of daily insights trends. And we've got a rising retail category as well, where you can look on a daily basis and look at the trends. So it's understanding what's happening in the market and being able to respond to that quickly. And I think it's that responsiveness that's really important. I'll do a plug for George's article on thinking like a pure player, which I think was excellent. Your lights have gone out, which wasn't. I'm
in the office today, Bethany seems to be on it.
Exactly. Ringing the bell. Time to go, which was sort of thinking about, how do all businesses pivot to be more agile? And, that's everything from, data systems, working much more real time, to transparency and to faster, better communication within the business, less hierarchy, less infrastructure. So it's the 2 aspects. It's how you run the business and how responsive you are to the consumer demands. And I like what Cameron was saying about value proposition. And if your proposition, is able to meet the polarity, then obviously that stands you in very good stead.
Good stuff. Well, as I've been clouded in darkness right now, that's probably a great time to draw this panel to a close. Thank you, guys. What a really, really interesting panel that has brought up so many different trends, so many polarized trends that hopefully we've alerted our retailers to and given them some advice on how exactly to navigate this incredibly complex market. So all that's left for me to say is thank you to all our panelists for taking part, and thank you to you, the viewers, for watching. See you next time.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. Thank you. Thanks, guys.